Hello everyone. So welcome to my talk on Mobopoly. It's a talk about mob programming. We've been using it fairly regularly for the last few months at Createk, so it's been fairly successful. We're not playing Monopoly, by the way, I'm just going to say. I figured because it's usually the start of so many arguments, I thought it'd be safer to just talk about it instead. So I'm Robin. You've probably seen me before. I'm not great at introducing myself, so I'll explain a bit. Rewind a couple of years ago, I was at Edinburgh University doing Environmental Geoscience. The last talk I actually did was on microplastics and how they're affecting estuarine food webs. And since then, I sort of finished uni, realized I was more interested in the software I was using for like ocean data mapping and stuff like that. I got into Makers Academy, which is a boot camp down in London, teaching Ruby on Rails, TDD, those sort of practices and things. So did that intensively for 3 months, sat at home in my parents' house in my pajamas typing away. I then got a job at Createk in Manchester. So I moved over here and that's where I've been since. And yeah. So the only other thing about me really is like I'm a fell runner / trail runner. So that's me looking miserable in the Lake District on a very wet weekend 2 weeks ago. So the reason why it's called Mobopoly is basically an idea that just popped into my head. I was trying to make the talk sound interesting and all I could think about was the Kaiser Chiefs album that's called The Angry Mob. So this was the alternative. I'll try and explain it. If it doesn't make sense, just focus on the mob programming part. Basically, I want you to imagine the apps and projects that you work on as a Monopoly board. So the different streets and places on the Monopoly board are different areas of your app that you and your team sort of visit to work on, add features, fix bugs, things like that. So you sort of, the low value streets, you know, like your Old Kent Road, places like that, are sort of areas where you can get your quick wins. Sort of, you're not in there very often, it's not used very much by the people that are using your app. So you don't need to spend much time there to fix things and to add things. Whereas other areas of your app, so sort of your Mayfair, places like that, I'm saying are sort of high value areas of your app that get used a lot and they've got high churn. So they're a bit more like if you want to change something in there, it requires a bit more effort and a bit more time. So that's sort of the basic start of it. The currency on the board is developer time. So when I'm saying like high value areas and things, I'm basically saying the cost of putting property like on there, so you take ownership of different areas of your app. The cost of the property is the amount of developer time needed to sort of fix things or add features there. So for core areas of your app that get used a lot, it's going to require more developer time. So those areas are the ones that we've sort of chosen as places to apply mob programming as a team at Createk, and it's been successful because it's good to get more ideas in there. It's places where it's really key to get high code quality and make sure that everybody sort of knows what's going on in those areas. It's worth investing the time. And on the other side, when you put the property on those areas, like you do on a Monopoly board, you put your hotels and things like that, you charge rent to the other people that are playing, you get value out of it as well, which is also saved developer time. So basically you'll reduce costs in other things when developers revisit that area and other things that you do as a team. So Monopoly, writing solo, you're pairing on your own, you're working on your own. So it's just you at your keyboard. So it's fast. You can have multiple people obviously working on different tickets at the same time. So things are moving through nicely. But with that, you're sort of stuck to one person's approach to solving a problem. Obviously, you'll probably discuss it with your team beforehand, but at the end of the day, it's down to that person to apply their techniques, their experience to fix bugs or add features, and then it all gets code reviewed at the end. But with that, like when it comes to the code review, like, so I like to do yoga sometimes, and when you go to a class, there's one teacher teaching 30 odd people, and with it, with yoga you want to get the alignment right, otherwise, you know, you tie yourself up in a knot and you end up in hospital. And it's hard for one teacher to sort of make sure that everybody's doing things properly, like everyone's aligned. So you sort of go through the class and you can end up with like aches and pains afterwards because you've not been in the right positions. And that can kind of happen with lots of sort of code reviews going on at the same time. You're having quick glances at things, but you know, things can slip under the cracks, and you know, you might spot a big change that could need doing, but you just don't have the time, and you can't implement them basically. So as an answer to that came Duopoly, which is pairing. So you work with a team member, you get two ideas working on the same thing, you bounce ideas off each other, you've got a driver, a navigator, and you work through the problems together. And with that, generally you see code quality going up as you're sort of checking each other as you go along. So mob programming, if you don't know what it is, basically it's sort of an extension of pairing. So it sort of came from, I don't know how you pronounce it, Llewellyn Falco, who championed sort of strong style pairing, which is like I say, a driver and a navigator. But with mobbing, you get multiple navigators. So you get as many people from your team in as you deem fit. And again, it's all about bouncing ideas off each other and working through problems that way. So you get more people checking the code, more ideas going in. So it seems a bit odd, like you're putting more developers in to solve one problem. You're sort of limiting what your team can push out in at the same time. So if you've got 5 developers and you've got one problem that you're working on, does that mean it's 1/5 as productive? And the thing is, it could be 1/5 as productive if your mob isn't really working very effectively. If you don't communicate, things like that, you're sort of wasting your money, your developer time, basically. Things aren't going to be going through as quickly and as efficiently, and you're not going to get that sort of boost in code quality and the benefits that you can get through mobbing. I mentioned earlier about property value by reducing the costs. So you reduce costs in things like code rewriting later on when other people visit areas, code rework and review, and learning code that you didn't write. So I'll explain those a bit more. So the key with it is you need the effective collaboration for this to actually work. So you reduce the code rewriting because you think through the problems as a team together. You've got varying levels of experience in your mob. Some people may have worked on that particular area of the app before. Some people won't. So it's all about pooling together. And then through those well-informed design decisions, when you come to add features later on, then you don't have to, you shouldn't have to rework everything again because it doesn't fit for this. Hopefully you've put it together in a way that's more ready for change in the future. So in terms of code review and rework, one benefit with a mob is that you're sort of doing a code review whilst you're actually doing the ticket because everybody is watching what's going on. So hopefully if it's a fully functioning mob, if somebody's come up with an idea and it's been written out by the driver, then if someone on the team thinks, hang on, that seems a little bit weird, that's not going to work, hopefully people are communicating and voicing what they think. And because of that, you get an increased code quality as you're going along. And when you do put things out, hopefully you're getting less bugs back and there's less rework that's needed on tickets that you're doing. Another benefit of it is that mobbing is a good way of sort of merging code in that other people have been doing. So if you might have a mob going, but other people are working on other things, a mob is a good way when you're getting different branches merging in to get everyone together. You can sort the conflicts out. And if you've been generating this good communication in your team, it makes those merge conflicts a lot easier to deal with. And reducing code learning. So obviously I'm quite an inexperienced coder. I've only been doing it for a couple of years. So when I go to areas of an app, like when I started at Createk, it was a huge app and it was difficult for me to sort of read what other people had written before. The good thing with mobbing is that you use it on these sort of high value areas on your Monopoly board, and it's useful because everybody on your team is getting experience in that area. So later down the line, when you come to do something else there, then more people have an understanding of it. Hopefully you're not going to get there and think, I have no idea how this works. Hopefully you'll have worked on it and you'll understand it. And even if you didn't, there's more people on the team for you to sort of ask, and there should be quite a good understanding within the team. The other benefit of it is, I mean, I didn't think of this before, but it sort of has happened while we've been mob programming, is resilience. So because you've obviously got more people working on a ticket, if you get interruptions, you get urgent bugs coming in, things like that, or you have absences, people are ill or they're not there, the ticket can still progress. And that's something that obviously doesn't happen if it's just one person on a ticket, or a pair as well. People can get diverted and you lose that sort of progress on things. So the main part of the talk is about sort of hurdles that we've come up against trying to make our mob as well oiled as possible, because you are investing all your developers, or like a large amount of them, in one thing. You need to make it productive. So I've got a list of things to go through. I'll hopefully not take too long, but with each one I'll sort of say what the problem is and then the way that we've decided to tackle it to try and make our mobs as productive as possible. So reduced through flow is basically because all your developers are invested trying to do one ticket, then the other things can get left sort of stale on the side. So what about your bugs, urgent issues that come up, and other features as well. With us being a small team, like if the entire team's mobbing, then obviously nothing else is going to happen. So our strategy for this and what we've tried to do is be as flexible as possible and be dynamic with our mob. So just because you've entered a mob and you've decided we're going to work on this, it's always good to sort of have little satellite groups break off. So if a bug comes in and somebody knows, hey, I know what that's going to be, let them break off, let them work on it and come back in. Or you can stop the mob entirely and work on something else as a group. And by doing that, it just means that other things can actually happen. And later on as well, I'll talk about mob fatigue, and this is a good way of sort of getting people out of the mob and doing other things to keep them fresh as well. So a mob can very quickly become ineffective. So again, if you start to lose engagement with people, this can be for a variety of reasons. Sort of mob size is often a question that's asked, what is the ideal mob size? Sometimes when we've been doing it as a full team, it seemed a bit like exhaustive. It didn't seem like we needed everybody there. And that's, again, where that flexibility comes in. We'll just be like, you know what, we don't need everyone here, let's break off. And other times, just like a team of 3 or something like that are perfectly capable of tackling a specific thing, and you still get value out of having those extra minds on one thing. And then just things like repetitive tasks and also cleaning up as well. You don't need a mob just to finish off a ticket where you're just removing duplication or fixing sort of a few tests that you can't seem to get to work. That's a really good time to just leave a pair to do it and then get working on your other things as well. So the main way that we've sort of addressed that sort of hurdle of becoming ineffective is just sort of being mindful of what's happening. So with mobbing, you do tend to stand up a lot. You can look at your team. You know, if everyone's sat there on the phone or spinning a fidget spinner or something like that, then clearly something's not right. Like it's not working as well as you want it to. So then consider breaking off or doing something else, or just having a break, stand up, get some fresh blood in the legs and things. And also retrospectives as well. We've done quite a few of these where we've just been like, we've asked the entire team, what's going well? Do we think anything can be improved? And that's been really good to sort of just keep reflecting on how things are going. And that's how we've come up with a lot of these sort of strategies. So to begin with, there's sort of a slow initial phase. When we first started mobbing, there was a lot of things that sort of needed ironing out. There's the age-old sort of developer holy war of the setup that you want. Obviously, everybody has their own preference. We've spent a lot of time arguing over Vim plugins and setups like that, which we're still not sorted yet, like 2 or 3 months down the line of mobbing. But the idea of the mob is that you rotate really quickly. You want fast transitions of like moving from being a navigator into a driver. You don't want to be sat there, you know, switching machines, loading different setups in, things like that. You want it to be as quick as possible. Also, just things like screen placements as well. We have it so it's sort of a big screen. You want to be able, like everybody to see it, obviously, but also it's good to be able to get up and move around because it encourages good conversation between everyone. And just simple things like timers. That's crucial for making sure that you do rotate when you want to, because it's very easy to just get distracted. You get focused in on a fix, or you've come up with an idea that's working, and then somebody gets stuck on the keyboard for a long time. And that's happened to me, and I sort of become a zombie after a while. Just you're trying to listen to everybody firing different ideas that you're saying, write this, write that, and shouting, key commands and stuff like that to quicken it up, and it just gets a bit exhausting. So it is really important to rotate. And also communication, like it's a different environment. You're there with your whole team, and everybody brings their own personality into a mob. So myself, like I'm quite introverted, and at first I was anxious about sort of being a mob, and sort of, you've got people that are way more experienced than I am, and I'm trying to get my ideas in there as well, but it can be hard to speak up. So you've got to deal with things like that as well, because you really want as many ideas in there as possible. That is why you're in the mob. So our strategy for dealing with that is a shared and stripped down setup. This is what we're trying to implement at the minute. We all use Vim, so we're trying to come up with sort of a base setup that everybody has on their computer of sort of the essentials basically that everybody uses. And then you can have your own stuff on there as well, and it's there so you can use it. So that again is just to speed up the transitions. One big screen, as I've mentioned. We also have a second screen now as well, sort of just on the table, because it can be like the screen is quite far away, so you don't want to be squinting all day. And encouraging questions and input, like no idea is a bad idea. You want to be encouraging people, firing things off each other. And regular breaks and rotation, like I need breaks, otherwise I do just, like my mind just turns to mush. So just have, I think we usually do it where after 3 or 4 rotations, we have like 5 or 10 minutes as a break, and like it just refreshes everybody, and then you get everyone thinking again. Divergence is the next one. So this is sort of split into 2 things. One is sort of you personally going off and, I don't know, you've seen something on the screen and you've got an idea, and you want to jump on your computer, Google some stuff, and you're off on your way and the mob's going a different way. This is like, it can be okay, this, but the problem is the further you go down your own path, the harder it is for you to get back into the mob and to explain your ideas. The whole point of a mob is, if you have an idea, then say it. You've got the driver there, tell the driver to Google the thing that you want to Google, and then everybody can read it, and everybody then knows from the start what your idea is, and you either, you know, it might not work, or it might be the thing that you all needed. The other thing is yak shaving. It's really easy, like, because you usually with a mob, you're working on big tickets, you're wanting to make significant changes in your app. A lot of the time, it's easy to just be like, oh, while we're here, there's that other thing as well, that, oh, it'd be so nice to just get that done. But at the end of the day, it's not part of what you're actually trying to work on, and you're already investing a lot of your team's time in this ticket. So you need to be deciding whether or not it's, you know, you're just shaving too many yaks or not. So the way we deal with this is to only have one computer open at all times. And yeah, we stick to that pretty well. Obviously, you've got to communicate with your team as well via messaging and things like that. And sometimes, you know, you do have to break off and do your own thing. But for the most part, just keep one computer open, and everyone else focuses on the big screen, and you work as a team that way. And again, encourage communication. It is the key of mobbing. And the last point has been really good for us as well, which is sort of discussing and writing out your criteria right at the start as a mob. So we sort of use tickets for things, and you have your criteria of what's been asked for. But then this is your opportunity at the start as developers to say, what do we need to go through to actually reach those goals? So we have a list on the board, little check boxes. It's always nice to like check things off. It makes you feel really productive. And we add to it as we're going along as well. And that's been really good to just add little things that we think, oh, we need to solve that just over there as well before we push this ticket out. And it's good at the end to have those things as like a tidy up to make sure that everything is working when you finish. Leaders is the next one. It's something that we came up against, and it does happen in teams that, well, I think it will happen in a lot of teams where there's a mix of experience. So obviously if you're in a mob and you know, somebody either knows one particular part of the app really well that you're working in, they can be really snappy at coming up with solutions to fix something, and then they sort of just dominate what's going on. So effectively, you've got an entire team there that's supposed to be working on something, but somebody's just gone straight in, this is my idea, it's going to work, and then everybody sort of either they lose concentration or they get really confused because you're going that fast. You need your team to be following your logic as you're going along. And if you're just sort of firing directions at the driver, he's frantically like typing away, then you lose interest and people get lost, which you want to be avoiding. So again, this comes down to sort of mindful mobbing, like watching what's happening with your team as you're going along. If people are sort of blank behind the eyes, then clearly something needs to stop. And we trialed something where we rotated chief navigators. So you have your mob, and usually everybody's a navigator, and you all politely instruct the driver. But we had a go of, once you'd been the driver, when you come off, you're the chief person that talks to the new driver. So everybody else in the mob sort of comes up with their ideas, they tell the chief navigator, and then they decide themselves what goes through the driver's hands. We did it for a bit, and we haven't really carried on with it, which I'm not sure if it's because we didn't deem it very successful. I always felt that like after you've come off the keyboard, because you've been typing away and focusing on that, that it's kind of difficult then to be instantly put in charge of making the decisions of the direction of where you're going. So maybe that could be tweaked a little bit. But it's another technique that you could try just to stop one person just overtaking the whole thing. The last bit is fatigue. So like at first I found mobbing exhausting because it's prolonged concentration, trying to sort of understand other people's logic, other people's approaches and ways of thinking for an entire day, which is tiring. And if you're doing it for like an entire week on a really big ticket or something like that, if everybody in your team's knackered, then obviously you're not going to get as much out of your mob as what you want. So the point of this is take regular breaks. Like I say, we do it after every third driver, and that's worked really well. And also that flexibility and dynamic nature of your mob as well. Allow breaking off. If somebody in the morning is just like, I can't take it anymore, I can't take you guys, I want to put my headphones on, do my own thing, then that's fine. That means that, you know, other things get worked on, the mob's still going for the people that it's working for, and everyone's happy. And the other point is, don't mob everything. I'm not trying to say that mobbing is now the new norm of tackling every single thing that you do. It's just another tool, another approach that you can use to sort of tackle things. So we had some Createk mob rules. So these were the main three things that we thought were key, and that's what we've stuck to. Just a 15-minute rotation, one computer open, and lay out the steps at the beginning for what you want to do. And they, like everything else, have sort of helped, but they're the three things that we thought were like core to making us productive. So lastly, just in summary, like when to apply your mob, like when we've used it, large features where you're going to get a lot of value out of everybody knowing about that small part of the app or the large part of the app, so that when they come back in future, it's great to have a team of people that know it really well. Structural changes and large refactors, and significant changes to high use areas as well. It might not be a big change, but if it's used all the time and you find yourself always going in there and it's just always a pain for everybody, you just want to avoid it like the plague, then it's a good time to get your whole team in and get a good change in there that everybody appreciates. And then when not to apply the mob. I put this in, but then I kind of realized later that some of these you could actually still use a mob for. I was just reading a blog post that said they found actually that using a mob for small features as well is really efficient, and they've actually had a lot of success for doing it. But you've just, again, got to be wary of, like, do you really need your entire team just to make simple changes? Then it's not going to be very effective. Repetitive tasks, obviously, you don't need an entire team to do that. And investigations, you don't need to mob, really, an investigation. If you could get 1 or 2 people to do it, and then they can inform a mob, and then you can start the ticket from there. That's always a good place to be, and just mopping things up as well. And that is it. So, Monopoly, Duopoly, and Mobopoly. Yeah, the point of the talk is not to say that we now think mobbing should just be the norm. It's just, we found it a really good way to tackle certain things, and it's great to have that option. And now that we've got it well oiled and it's working for us all, then it's really good to be able to just say, you know what, we've had that thing lingering for a long time, let's mob it and invest some time in it. And then you can obviously use pairing and just solo programming as well. And that's it. All right. Any questions?